Welcome to LMJ English. Today we take you on an incredible journey through history with the story of Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt. From her rise to power to her legendary romances and ultimate downfall, this is a tale of ambition, intelligence, and resilience. If you love learning English through engaging stories, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Cleopatra's early life. More than 2,000 years ago, in the grand and bustling city of Alexandria, Egypt, a baby girl was born who would one day become one of the most famous and powerful women in history. The year was 69 BCE, and the child's name was Cleopatra VII Philopator. She was born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a family of Greek origin that had ruled Egypt since the time of Alexander the Great. But although her family sat on the Egyptian throne, they were not truly Egyptian. They were descendants of Ptolemy I, one of Alexander's most trusted generals, who had taken control of Egypt after Alexander's death. The Ptolemies ruled Egypt as foreigners, speaking Greek, following Greek traditions, and rarely bothering to learn the language of the people they ruled. However, Cleopatra was different. Even from a young age, she showed a deep curiosity and intelligence that set her apart from her royal ancestors. While most members of the Ptolemaic dynasty isolated themselves in their luxurious palaces, Cleopatra took an interest in Egyptian culture and history. She studied the Egyptian language, making her the first of her family to do so, and she embraced Egyptian customs, even associating herself with the goddess Isis, a powerful symbol of motherhood, magic, and protection. Unlike her predecessors, Cleopatra did not want to be seen as a foreign queen. She wanted to be a true ruler of Egypt, a childhood of luxury and learning. Cleopatra grew up in a world of extraordinary wealth and privilege. As a princess, she lived in the grand palace of Alexandria, a vast and magnificent structure filled with golden statues, fine silks, and marble columns. Servants attended to her every need, and she had access to the greatest minds of the ancient world. Alexandria itself was a city of knowledge, home to the famous Library of Alexandria, which contained thousands of scrolls and texts from different civilizations. It was here that Cleopatra received an education that few, especially women, ever had the chance to experience. Cleopatra's education was rigorous and extensive. She was taught by the finest scholars, learning subjects such as mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and politics. But what made her truly remarkable was her gift for languages. It is said that she could speak at least 7 languages fluently, including Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Egyptian. This skill gave her a unique advantage, while other rulers relied on interpreters to communicate with their subjects and foreign leaders. Cleopatra could speak directly to them, winning their trust and admiration. Beyond her intelligence, Cleopatra possessed another gift, a captivating presence and extraordinary charm. Ancient historians describe her not only as beautiful, but also as possessing a sharp wit, a melodious voice, and an unmatched charisma. She understood that power was not only about intelligence, but also about persuasion and influence. Even as a young girl, she knew how to command attention and win people over with her words, a royal family full of betrayal. Despite the luxury of her childhood, Cleopatra's early years were filled with danger and uncertainty. Her father, Ptolemy I Auletes, was a weak and unpopular ruler. Many Egyptians resented him, believing that he cared more about pleasing the Romans than about protecting his own kingdom. To keep his throne, he was forced to pay enormous sums of money to Rome, draining Egypt's wealth and angering his people. As a result, Egypt became unstable, and rebellions broke out against his rule. At times, the situation was so dangerous that Cleopatra and her family had to flee Egypt to avoid being overthrown. Living in exile, Cleopatra saw firsthand how fragile power could be. She watched as her father struggled to hold on to his throne, constantly surrounded by enemies, traitors, and political schemes. She quickly realized that ruling was not just about wearing a crown, it was about being clever, strategic, and ruthless when necessary. But the greatest threat to Cleopatra did not come from outside the palace. It came from within her own family. The Ptolemaic dynasty was known for its ruthless power struggles. Brothers and sisters turned against each other, sons plotted against fathers, and queens murdered their rivals to seize the throne. Cleopatra knew that if she wanted to survive, she would have to be smarter and stronger than anyone else. A young woman ready for power. By the time Cleopatra reached her teenage years, she was already preparing for a future filled with both great ambition and great danger. She had the intelligence, the charisma, and the education to be a powerful ruler, but she also understood the brutal reality of royal life. She knew that she could not trust anyone completely, not even her own family. Then, when Cleopatra was around 14 years old, her life changed forever. Her mother, possibly Cleopatra V, mysteriously disappeared. Some believed she died of illness, while others suspected she was murdered in a royal plot. Soon after, Cleopatra's father fell seriously ill, leaving Egypt's throne vulnerable. Cleopatra understood that the moment she had been preparing for was near. She would have to fight for power, and she could not afford to lose. Cleopatra was not like other royal women who simply waited for a husband to rule alongside them. She had a vision for Egypt, one that went beyond just wearing a crown. She wanted to be more than just a queen. She wanted to be a leader, a warrior, and a symbol of strength for her people. And as the struggles for power within her family grew more intense, she knew that her greatest challenges were yet to come. Cleopatra becomes queen. At just 18 years old, Cleopatra found herself at the center of a power struggle that would determine not only her own fate, but also the future of Egypt. Her father, Ptolemy XIV, had died, leaving behind a fragile kingdom torn apart by political conflicts and foreign influence. According to his will, Cleopatra was to rule not alone, but alongside her 10-year-old brother Ptolemy XXX. Although ruling with a sibling was common in the Ptolemaic dynasty, Cleopatra had no intention of sharing power with a child. She believed that Egypt needed a strong and intelligent ruler, not a boy who was too young to understand the complexities of politics. But Cleopatra was not the only one with ambitions. Her brother's advisors had their own plans. Ptolemy was just a puppet in the hands of powerful and ambitious men, including his chief advisor, Pothinus, and his general, Achilles. These men saw Cleopatra as a threat to their control over Egypt. They wanted Ptolemy XIII to rule alone because they knew they could easily manipulate and control him. At first, Cleopatra tried to work alongside her brother, hoping to maintain her authority while keeping the peace. She made sure that her face appeared on Egyptian coins, a symbol of power that had historically been reserved for kings. She also took control of key government decisions, proving that she was far more experienced and capable than her young co-ruler. But the conflict between Cleopatra and her brother's supporters grew stronger every day. Ptolemy XIII, influenced by his advisors, began to see Cleopatra as his enemy. The tension between them reached its peak when Pothinus and Achilles plotted to remove Cleopatra from power completely. One night, Cleopatra received word that a coup was underway. If she did not act fast, she would be captured or worse, killed. With the help of her loyal supporters, Cleopatra escaped from the palace, leaving behind the golden halls of Alexandria that had once been her home. She was now a queen without her throne, Cleopatra in exile. The desert wind howled as Cleopatra and her small group of followers traveled through the harsh, unforgiving landscape. She had lost everything: her kingdom, her palace, and her power. But even in exile, she refused to give up. Cleopatra understood that if she wanted to reclaim her throne, she needed a powerful ally. She could not defeat Ptolemy III and his army alone. She needed someone with military strength, someone who could challenge her brother's forces and help her take back Egypt. That was when Cleopatra learned of an important arrival. Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, had just arrived in Alexandria. Caesar was a brilliant general and politician, but he had his own problems. He was in the middle of a civil war against his rival Pompey, and had come to Egypt looking for support. Cleopatra saw an opportunity. If she could win Caesar's favor, he might help her defeat her brother and restore her to the throne. But there was one problem. Ptolemy III and his advisors controlled Alexandria, and they would not allow Cleopatra to meet with Caesar. If she tried to walk into the palace, she would be captured immediately. That was when Cleopatra came up with a bold and daring plan. The famous carpet entrance. Cleopatra knew that first impressions mattered. She needed to surprise Caesar, impress him, and convince him that she was worthy of his support. But how could she get into the palace without being seen? With the help of her loyal servant Apollodorus, Cleopatra devised one of the most legendary entrances in history. Late at night, Apollodorus took a large rolled-up carpet and secretly smuggled Cleopatra into the royal palace. The carpet was carried directly to Caesar's private chambers. When the carpet was unrolled, Cleopatra emerged, looking stunning, confident, and full of charm and intelligence. Imagine Caesar's surprise. Instead of an enemy or a gift, he found a young, brilliant, and ambitious queen standing before him. Cleopatra, always skilled in the art of persuasion, spoke with eloquence and passion. She told Caesar of her rightful claim to the throne, of her dreams for a strong and prosperous Egypt, and of how her brother's advisors had betrayed her. Caesar, known for his sharp mind and appreciation for strong, intelligent women, was immediately captivated. He saw that Cleopatra was not just beautiful, but also brilliant, strategic, and fearless. He recognized that she could be a valuable ally, not just for Egypt, but also for Rome. And so that night a powerful alliance was born, one that would change the course of history. Caesar agreed to help Cleopatra reclaim her throne. But the battle for power was just beginning. Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. Cleopatra had won Julius Caesar's attention, but now she had to win back her throne. With the support of the most powerful man in Rome, she was closer than ever to reclaiming her rightful place as Queen of Egypt. However, her brother, Ptolemy the Thebes, and his advisors would not surrender easily. A battle for Egypt's future was about to begin, the conflict between Caesar and Ptolemy the Thebes. When Ptolemy the Thebes and his advisors learned that Cleopatra had secretly met with Caesar, they were furious. They had hoped to control Egypt by keeping Caesar on their side, but now the Roman general had been charmed and convinced by Cleopatra. Ptolemy the Thebes, still young and inexperienced, panicked. His advisors, however, were ready for war. A violent conflict erupted in Alexandria, known as the Siege of Alexandria, 48 BCE. Ptolemy XIII's forces, led by his general Achilles, surrounded the royal palace, trapping Caesar and Cleopatra inside. With only a small Roman force at his command, Caesar was greatly outnumbered, but he was a master strategist. He ordered his soldiers to fortify their position, defending the palace as they awaited reinforcements from Rome. During the battle, a tragic event occurred. Caesar ordered the burning of enemy ships in Alexandria's harbor, but the flames spread out of control. The legendary Library of Alexandria, one of the greatest centers of knowledge in the ancient world, was partially destroyed. Thousands of ancient scrolls and books were lost in the fire, a devastating blow to history and science. Meanwhile, Cleopatra remained by Caesar's side, using her sharp intellect to advise him on Egyptian politics and geography. She knew that if they could defeat Ptolemy XIII's army, she would finally secure her throne. The fall of Ptolemy XIII. As the battle raged on, Caesar's reinforcements finally arrived, turning the tide of the war. The Roman forces, now stronger, launched a counterattack against Ptolemy XIII's army. The young king, realizing that he had lost the battle, tried to escape across the Nile River, but his boat capsized and he drowned. With Ptolemy XIII dead, the war was over. Cleopatra had won. Cleopatra becomes queen once again. Following the victory, Cleopatra was officially restored as Queen of Egypt. However, she was still expected to rule alongside a co-ruler as per Egyptian tradition. To secure her position, she married her younger brother Ptolemy XV, who was just 12 years old at the time. But everyone knew that Cleopatra was the true ruler of Egypt, and Ptolemy XV was nothing more than a symbolic figure. Now that she had power, Cleopatra turned her focus toward strengthening Egypt. She restored order, improved the economy, and worked to regain the trust of her people. But she was not just thinking about Egypt, she was thinking about Rome. During this time, Cleopatra and Julius Caesar became lovers, and soon Cleopatra became pregnant with his child. In 47 BCE, she gave birth to a son, whom she named Ptolemy, 13 Caesarion, meaning Little Caesar. Cleopatra saw her son as the future ruler, who could one day unite Egypt and Rome, creating a vast empire under her lineage. To strengthen their relationship, Cleopatra traveled to Rome with Caesar in 46 BCE, arriving in magnificent fashion. She did not come as a simple guest. She arrived as a queen, with a grand entourage of Egyptian servants, gold-covered chariots, and exotic animals. The Roman people were fascinated by her beauty, intelligence, and royal presence, but they also feared her influence over Caesar. Many Roman senators did not trust Cleopatra, believing that she was trying to manipulate their leader. However, Cleopatra's time in Rome was cut short. In 44 BCE, tragedy struck. Julius Caesar was assassinated in the Roman Senate by a group of conspirators, including his own friends and allies. Cleopatra's greatest protector and ally was dead. Cleopatra's escape and return to Egypt. With Caesar gone, Cleopatra's position in Rome became dangerous. Many Romans saw her as an outsider and a threat, and without Caesar's protection, she had no choice but to flee. She quickly gathered her son Caesarion and her supporters, escaping Rome and returning to Egypt. Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra was determined to maintain her rule. She knew that without Rome's support, Egypt was vulnerable. She also understood that Caesar's death had created a new power struggle in Rome, as his successors fought to control the empire. Cleopatra realized that to protect Egypt, she would need a new Roman ally. She began looking for the next great leader of Rome, someone who could help secure her power and protect Egypt from Rome's growing influence. That was when Mark Antony entered her life. Cleopatra and Mark Antony. After Julius Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE, Rome was thrown into chaos. The empire was divided as powerful men fought for control, and Cleopatra knew that Egypt's survival depended on who would rise to the top. She needed a new ally, someone strong enough to protect her kingdom. That man was Mark Antony, one of Rome's most powerful generals and a loyal supporter of Caesar. The rise of Mark Antony. After Caesar's death, his closest allies formed a political alliance known as the Second Triumvirate. This alliance consisted of Mark Antony, a brilliant general and one of Caesar's most trusted men; Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and legal heir; Lepidus, a Roman statesman with political influence. Together, they hunted down Caesar's assassins and took control of Rome. However, Antony and Octavian did not trust each other, and soon they became rivals. Antony was put in charge of Rome's eastern territories, including Egypt. Cleopatra saw this as an opportunity. If she could win Antony's favor, she could secure Egypt's independence and power. The legendary First Meeting. In 41 BCE, Mark Antony summoned Cleopatra to meet him in the city of Tarsus, modern-day Turkey. He wanted to discuss Egypt's role in Rome's future, but Cleopatra knew that this meeting was more than just politics. It was a test of power and influence. Cleopatra did not simply obey Antony's summons like an ordinary ruler. Instead, she orchestrated one of the most dramatic entrances in history. She arrived in Tarsus aboard a golden ship, its sails dyed purple, the most expensive color in the ancient world. The ship was decorated with silver and jewels, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of perfume and incense. Cleopatra herself was dressed as Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love, and she was surrounded by servants dressed as gods and goddesses. When Antony saw her, he was captivated. He was known for his love of luxury and excess, and Cleopatra's entrance was a masterpiece of seduction and power. At their first meeting, Cleopatra did not beg for Rome's favor. Instead, she commanded Antony's attention. She challenged him, entertained him, and charmed him with her intelligence, wit, and charisma. Antony, a man who had fought countless battles and conquered many lands, found himself completely enchanted by Cleopatra. That night, a new alliance and a passionate love affair began. The love story of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Unlike her relationship with Julius Caesar, which was largely political, Cleopatra and Mark Antony were truly in love. Their relationship was filled with extravagance, adventure, and passion. Cleopatra invited Antony to Alexandria, where they spent months feasting, drinking, and enjoying each other's company. They formed a society called the Inimitable Livers, where they held lavish banquets, played games, and even dressed as ordinary people to explore the city at night. But their love was not just about pleasure, it was also about power. Cleopatra needed Antony to protect Egypt, while Antony needed Cleopatra's wealth and resources to fund his military campaigns. In time, their bond grew even stronger, and Cleopatra gave birth to 3 of Antony's children. Alexander Helios, named after the sun god Cleopatra Selene, named after the moon goddess Ptolemy Philadelphus, named after her royal ancestors. Cleopatra dreamed of building an empire that would rival Rome, with herself and Antony as co-rulers. She believed that their children would one day rule over both Egypt and Rome, uniting the 2 greatest civilizations of the ancient world. However, their relationship made many enemies in Rome, especially Octavian, who saw Cleopatra as a dangerous foreign queen trying to steal Antony away from Rome. Rome turns against Cleopatra and Antony. Back in Rome, Octavian used Cleopatra and Antony's relationship to turn the Roman people against them. He spread rumors that Antony had been bewitched by Cleopatra, that he had abandoned Rome for an Egyptian queen, and that he was planning to betray his homeland. The real breaking point came in 34 BCE, when Antony declared Caesarion, Cleopatra's son with Julius Caesar, as the rightful heir of Rome instead of Octavian. This was a direct challenge to Octavian's claim to power, and it gave him the excuse he needed to start a war. In 32 BCE, Rome officially declared war on Cleopatra and Antony. The stage was set for one of the most famous battles in history, the Battle of Actium, the fall of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. By 32 BCE, Cleopatra and Mark Antony had built an empire of love, power, and ambition, but their greatest battle was yet to come. Rome had turned against them. Octavian, now Caesar Augustus, had declared war on Cleopatra, framing her as a dangerous foreign queen who had bewitched Antony and planned to conquer Rome. In reality, Octavian's true enemy was Antony, but he knew that attacking Cleopatra directly would turn public opinion in his favor. Now Cleopatra and Antony had to defend Egypt and their legacy, but they would soon realize that they were fighting a battle they could not win. The Battle of Actium, the decisive battle between Octavian's forces and Antony and Cleopatra's army, took place at Actium, a naval battle off the coast of Greece. In 31 BCE, Antony and Cleopatra assembled their fleet, hoping to crush Octavian's navy and secure their rule. But the battle did not go as planned. Octavian's general, Agrippa, was a brilliant strategist, and he managed to trap Antony's fleet in a tight position, cutting off their ability to maneuver. Antony's soldiers, outnumbered and demoralized, began to lose hope. Then, at the height of the battle, something unexpected happened. Cleopatra's fleet suddenly turned and sailed away from the battle. No one knows exactly why she did this. Some believe she thought the battle was already lost and wanted to save her fleet, while others think she panicked. When Antony saw Cleopatra's ships retreating, he was heartbroken and confused. Believing that Cleopatra had betrayed him, he abandoned the battle and followed her ship, leaving his troops behind. Without Antony's leadership, his forces collapsed and Octavian won the battle. This was the beginning of the end, the final days of Antony and Cleopatra. After their defeat, Antony and Cleopatra fled back to Egypt, but hope was fading fast. Octavian and his army followed them, preparing to invade Alexandria and end their reign for good. Antony, once a proud and fearless general, was now a broken man. He felt that he had lost everything: his army, his honor, and Cleopatra's trust. As Octavian's forces marched closer, Antony received false news. Someone told him that Cleopatra had died. Devastated, Antony could not bear to live without her. In his despair, he fell on his own sword, choosing to die rather than be captured. But as he lay dying, bleeding, and in pain, he received a shocking message. Cleopatra was still alive. Antony's loyal servants carried him to Cleopatra's hiding place, and in her arms he took his final breath. With tears in her eyes, Cleopatra held him close, knowing that the man she loved was gone forever. Now Cleopatra was alone. Cleopatra's last stand. After Antony's death, Cleopatra knew that Octavian would soon arrive. He planned to capture her and take her to Rome, where he would parade her through the streets as a conquered queen. But Cleopatra refused to be humiliated. She locked herself inside her tomb, surrounding herself with gold, treasures, and royal symbols of her reign. She dressed in her finest robes, placing a crown upon her head. She sent a message to Octavian requesting to meet him. When he arrived, he tried to convince her to surrender, promising that he would spare her life. But Cleopatra knew better. She knew that she would be treated as a prisoner, a trophy and a symbol of Rome's victory. She would not let Octavian decide her fate. The death of Cleopatra. According to legend, Cleopatra arranged for a deadly Egyptian, cobra and asp, to be smuggled into her chamber. She held it to her skin, allowing the venom to take her life. Others say she used poison hidden in a hairpin, but no one knows for certain. What is clear is that Cleopatra chose to die on her own terms, just like Antony. When Octavian's soldiers arrived, they found Cleopatra dead, lying peacefully in her royal chamber, her face serene and unafraid. Octavian had won the war, but he had not defeated Cleopatra's spirit. The end of an empire, the birth of a legend. With Cleopatra's death, Egypt fell to Rome and the Ptolemaic dynasty came to an end. Octavian took control of the country, marking the beginning of the Roman Empire. However, Cleopatra's story did not end with her death. She became a legend, a symbol of intelligence, power, and resilience. People admired her for her bravery, strategic mind, and refusal to surrender. Even today, more than 2,000 years later, Cleopatra's name remains one of the most famous in history. She was not just a queen, she was a warrior, a ruler, and a woman who dared to defy an empire. Her story teaches us that true power is not just about armies and wealth. It is about determination, intelligence, and the courage to shape one's own destiny. Epilogue. The legacy of Cleopatra. The death of Cleopatra VII in 30 BCE marked the end of an era. With her passing, Egypt lost its last true ruler, and for the first time in thousands of years, the great civilization of the pharaohs fell under foreign control. Rome, under Octavian, Caesar Augustus, took complete possession of Egypt, making Crete a province of the Roman Empire. The once great kingdom, which had built pyramids, temples, and one of the most advanced civilizations in history, was now ruled by men who had never walked its lands as true kings. Cleopatra had fought until the end to keep Egypt independent, but now her beloved country was no longer its own. Octavian did not want Cleopatra to be remembered as a powerful queen. He wanted to erase her legacy and rewrite history, making himself the hero of the story. He spread propaganda that Cleopatra was a seductress, a woman who had led Antony astray and caused his downfall. He destroyed statues, removed her name from inscriptions, and silenced any records that praised her reign. But history is not so easily erased. Instead of being forgotten, Cleopatra became a legend. Stories of her intelligence, charm, and strength spread throughout the ancient world. Poets, writers, and artists could not resist her tale, a queen who had dared to stand against Rome, a woman who had captivated the greatest leaders of her time, and a ruler who had chosen death over humiliation. Even in defeat, Cleopatra had won immortality. Cleopatra's legacy, a queen who defied an empire. Cleopatra's life was extraordinary. She was not just a beautiful queen, as many later stories would suggest. She was a brilliant leader, a skilled diplomat, a master strategist, and a visionary ruler. Her legacy continues to inspire people around the world, showing that true power is not just about armies and wealth, but intelligence and determination. Here are the 4 greatest lessons Cleopatra's story teaches us. Cleopatra was a politician, not just a beauty. Many stories focus on Cleopatra's legendary beauty, but this is not what made her powerful. She was a master of politics and diplomacy. She spoke at least 7 languages, allowing her to communicate directly with foreign leaders and the people of Egypt. She negotiated alliances with Rome, ensuring Egypt's safety in an era of powerful enemies. She stabilized Egypt's failing economy by introducing new trade policies, reducing taxes for the poor, and restoring the country's great wealth. She was not afraid to make bold decisions, whether it was forming alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, or choosing her own fate rather than being humiliated by Rome. Cleopatra was not a passive queen who relied on men. She was an active ruler who shaped her own destiny. Cleopatra was a symbol of female power. In a time when women were expected to be silent and obedient, Cleopatra refused to follow those rules. She ruled Egypt alone, something few women in history had done. She commanded armies and fleets, proving that leadership was not just for men. She controlled her own image, presenting herself as the goddess Isis, making sure her people saw her as a divine ruler. She stood up against Octavian, the most powerful man in Rome, refusing to become his prisoner. Cleopatra's story is a reminder that women can be just as strong, strategic, and intelligent as any male ruler in history. Cleopatra fought until the very end. Many rulers in history, when faced with defeat, surrendered, but Cleopatra never did. She could have accepted Octavian's mercy, but she refused to be paraded through Rome as a conquered queen. She chose death over humiliation, proving that even in defeat, she remained in control of her own fate. She protected her legacy, ensuring that her name would be remembered not as a prisoner, but as a queen who chose her own destiny. Even though she lost her kingdom, she won immortality in history. Cleopatra's name will never be forgotten. Over 2,000 years later, Cleopatra's story still captures the imagination of people all over the world. She has been portrayed in films, books, plays, and art, each version painting her in a different light. Some see her as a romantic heroine, others as a brilliant politician, and others as a tragic figure who fought a battle she could not win. But one thing is certain: Cleopatra's name has never faded. In art, she is often depicted wearing a crown, holding a scepter, and standing proudly as a queen. In literature, she is remembered as a woman who captivated the most powerful men in Rome and yet remained independent in her ambitions. In history, she is recognized as one of the greatest female rulers of all time. Even today, we study her life, leadership, and influence. She is still a symbol of intelligence, courage, and resilience, a reminder that one woman can shape the course of history. Final reflection: what we can learn from Cleopatra. Cleopatra's life was filled with victory, love, betrayal, and tragedy. But above all, it teaches us one important lesson: true power is not given, it is taken. Cleopatra knew that no one would simply hand her the throne. She fought for it, outsmarted her rivals, and ruled on her own terms. Knowledge is the greatest weapon. She used her education, her language skills, and her strategic mind to control alliances, wars, and politics. Leaders never surrender. Even in her final moments, Cleopatra refused to let Octavian decide her fate. She chose how her story ended, proving that real power comes from within. History remembers those who dare to be different. Many queens and kings have ruled Egypt, but few are as famous as Cleopatra. She was not just another ruler, she was a force of nature, a woman who dared to challenge an empire, be like Cleopatra, bold, fearless, and unforgettable. And so, the story of Cleopatra does not end, it lives on. Enjoyed the story? Don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts. Your support helps us create more fascinating and valuable stories. Subscribe now to LMJ English for more incredible content. Key vocabulary from Cleopatra's Story Dynasty, a series of rulers from the same family who rule over a country for a long time. Alliance, a formal agreement between two or more parties to work together for mutual benefit. Betrayal, the act of being disloyal or unfaithful to someone, often leading to serious consequences. Conquer, to take control of a place or people by using military force. Exile, the state of being forced to leave one's home or country, usually for political reasons. Propaganda, information often. Misleading, spread to influence people's opinions or beliefs. Ambition, a strong desire to achieve something, often requiring great effort and determination. Strategy, a careful plan or method used to achieve a specific goal, often in politics or war. Seduction, the act of attracting or persuading someone, often using charm or appeal. Manipulation, the skillful and sometimes dishonest control or influence over others to achieve one's goals. Dictator, a leader with total control over a country, often ruling without fair elections or opposition. Betrayal, the act of breaking trust or loyalty, often resulting in negative consequences. Legacy, the lasting impact or influence a person leaves behind after their death. Rebellion, an organized resistance against authority, often involving violence or conflict. Charisma, a natural ability to attract, influence, and inspire people. Treachery, a betrayal of trust, often involving secret plans to harm someone. Naval battle, a fight between armed ships at sea, often determining control over territories. Ruler, a person who governs or has authority over a country or region. Conspiracy, a secret plan, made by a group of people to do something unlawful or harmful. Defiance, the act of resisting authority or refusing to accept defeat.